Welcome to my humble abode, darlings. Come in out of the rain and get comfortable. I have a story to tell you, and I hope you enjoy. If you do, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Hello, my darlings. I have not done any folklore for a while, so I thought I would do some today. This is stories native to America through the people who have lived here for millennia, of course. Various nations and tribes. I think, I love learning about Celtic and Scandinavian and English folklore. That's where my people come from, but I think often it is just as important to hear the folklore of the land you live in. And you can gain quite a bit from that, too. Anyway, I am actually going to start with a story from Yosemite. It does not mention what they call tribes in this, or nations, or however is more appropriate to call it. I'll probably go with tribes just because it's there. Other words that offend my own sensibilities as well as others that are far outdated, I may probably change. Just to make myself more comfortable, if nothing else. So, anyway, the first one is The Rock of the Measuring Worm from El Capitan in Yosemite, which I'm fascinated with because of so many that go missing there with the missing 411 phenomena. If you don't know about it, go look up David Paulides. I have some videos myself on that subject. Anyway, on to the story. Two small Indian boys were seated before the teepee fashioning bow and arrows. "Mine is not good," exclaimed one of the boys, throwing aside the stick with which he had been working. "Besides, I'm tired of sitting still. Let's go for a swim in the river." Always they dashed, running swiftly, as the Indian child is taught to run. Into the water they jumped, swimming, diving, and splashing, and stopping now and then for a water battle. At length they'd had enough of the water, so out upon the bank they came. "Let us climb up on this rock to dry ourselves. Its top is flat and the sun is warm upon it." So they climbed up on the flat rock, and in a few moments both boys were fast asleep. Then a strange thing began to occur. The rock slowly and gradually commenced to stretch itself up, higher and higher and higher, and the boys continued to sleep. Taller and taller the rock grew, carrying the boys upward on its flat surface until at last their faces were bathed by the clouds that floated in the sky. And still they slept. For many moons they slept, for a whole snow. In the meantime, the people of their village missed them and began to search. They searched by the river and by the forest, but no one could find the missing boys. There was great sorrow in the village. None of the people knew of the great rock. Only the animals knew. Then, one day the animals came together and they said, "What is to be done? The people are sorrowing because the boys that are lost. Can we not return them to their friends?" So the animals decided to try and get the boys off the great rock. "You are littlest," said the lion to the mouse. "You go first." So the mouse made ready and sprang as high as she could up the side of the rock. Just a handbreadth she jumped and fell back into the valley. So the rat tried next, and he made a mighty effort and jumped 2 handbreadths, and then he too fell back into the valley. Alter that every sort of animal jumped in turn, the otter and the badger, the fox and the wolf and the bear, and though each one jumped as high as he could, he jumped only against the side of the rock and went tumbling back into the valley. Last of all came the lion. With a mighty roar he sprang, but it was of no use. He too struck the side of the great rock and fell back with the others. They were about to give up and go back to their homes in the river and in the forest, when a tiny measuring worm came creeping over the grass. "By your leave," she said, quite humbly addressing the lion, "I should like to try and see what I can do." "Ho, ho, ho!" laughed all the animals together. "Ho, ho, ho!" But without waiting for their consent, the measuring worm made her way slowly to the foot of the great rock, and then, little by little, little by little, she drew herself up, up, up the side of the mighty rock. Up and up and up she went until she was lost to the sight of the animals waiting below. At last she reached the top and drew herself over the edge, and there lay the two boys, still sleeping. Then the measuring worm took the two boys and started back. She climbed with them down the side of the rock, little by little, down and down and down. At last she came to within sight of the waiting animals. Down and down still she climbed until she was in their midst. So mighty was the noise made by the assembled animals that it wakened the sleeping boys and brought the men and women of the village to the foot of the great rock. And so the boys were restored to their people. But the great rock, with its almost perpendicular sides, stands today, lofty and imposing. The next story is from the Blackfeet, who are just to the north of me, actually. This one is entitled, "Why the Aspen Leaves Are Never Still." "Why are the leaves of the aspen tree never still, grandmother?" asked one of the children of the old basket weaver. "I've watched them so many times, and they always talk together." "You are right, my daughter. When there is no breath in the heavens, the aspen leaves still talk." "Is there a story about the aspen tree, grandmother?" asked the little girl. "Will you tell it to me if there is?" "Yes, daughter," replied the old woman. "There is a story about the aspen tree, which is good that you should hear." Taking her basket upon her knees and continuing her weaving, the grandmother told her story. Many, many moons ago, there was a young warrior who was lonely in his father's lodge, and he said to himself, "I will seek a maiden to wed and make ready a lodge of my own." So he watched the maidens of the village, and he found two sisters who seemed so modest and kind and good that he knew not which of them to choose. When he went to their father's lodge, he was kindly treated by both. They gave him words of welcome, they smiled upon him, and they prepared food and set it before him. Both could weave fine baskets for the lodge and make rich embroidery of quills. Many times the young brave went to the lodge, but he could not tell which maiden would make him a better wife. And at last he said to himself, "I will try magic. I will get the medicine man to help me." So he visited the lodge of the medicine man, and after a time there came away from the medicine man's lodge an old man, bent and leaning upon his stick. He walked feebly, and his garments were ragged. His hair was white, and his chin quivered with age. The old man went to the lodge of the two maidens and begged a bit of food. The younger sister asked him to come inside the lodge and rest. Then she prepared some nourishing food and gave to him, and while he ate it, she noticed that his feet were barely covered with pieces of skin tied about the ankle. She hastened to finish the moccasins that she was embroidering, and gave them to him so his feet should not be bruised with walking. The older sister looked on with scorn and made unkind remarks. She asked her sister why she should spend time upon a forlorn old man who could never repay her. She laughed at his ragged garments and at his quivering chin and feeble knees, then in a sharp voice bade him be gone before her lover should come from the hunt. The old man went away, after thanking the little sister for her kindness. A short time later, the young warrior came to the door of the lodge, bearing his shoulders a deer which he had shot. Both sisters smiled at him and bade him enter. He passed the older sister without a glance and laid the deer at the feet of the younger. As they looked down at the deer, both sisters discovered that the young man had upon his feet the moccasins that the younger sister had just given to the strange old man. "I seek a maiden to be the light of my lodge," he said, "and by magic I have found one. I was the old man who came thither for shelter and comfort, and so I learned how to escape a sharp tongue and bitter words." But the medicine man's charm had not yet finished his work, he added. "I do not want another to suffer the fate I have so narrowly escaped." He took the younger sister by the hand and led her from the lodge. The older sister followed, and as she stepped outside, her feet became rooted to the ground, and she was turned into an aspen tree. The younger sister became the light of the young warrior's lodge, but the aspen tree, like the older sister, while beautiful to look upon, has since that day had a whispering and unruly tongue. The next is called the Thunder People, and is from the Passamaquoddy tribe, which is so fun to say. And I always love that word in Pete's Dragon, but that's just an aside. Anyway, the Thunder People. Once upon a time, a young Indian warrior was hunting with his bow and arrow. He followed far after a flat deer until he found himself standing upon a great rock high above the plains. The clouds were gathering thickly. The sky was black with clouds. The youth was far away from his lodge. Again he saw the deer, and he drew back his bow. But as he did so, the deer was changed into the form of a maiden, standing against the rock. The youth dropped his bow in wonder. He looked at the maiden. In the distance he heard the voice of the thunder. "Who are you?" he asked in amazement. And the maiden answered, "I am the sister of the Thundermen. Will you come with me and visit our home?" The youth consented, and the maiden struck the great rock against which she had stood. There was a flash, like a flash of lightning, and the rock opened and made a passage for them. The maiden led the way, and the youth followed, and when they had passed through the rock, they came into a strange country, to the home of the Thunder Maiden. The floors and walls were of clouds, and the clouds were of every shade, from silver gray to the deepest purple black. They were soft to walk upon, and smooth as the smoothest velvet, and their changing shades were more wonderful than any artist could paint. The maiden's robes were trailing silver, and her hair was black as midnight. She led the youth to her father, who sat upon a throne formed from the deepest purple clouds. His hair and beard was like white, like the mist that floated across the sky, but his robe was black, and here and there a dash of brilliant gold. "Welcome, my son," said the old man. "Have you come to dwell among us?" The youth looked at the beautiful maiden, and he answered, "Yes, my father." So he became one of the Thunder People. After a time, the brothers of the maiden returned home, and when they saw the youth and knew that he had come to dwell among them, they proposed a game of ball. Now their balls were big and black and very heavy, and they did not throw them, but rolled them back and forth across the clouds, and the noise was very great. When the father of the Thundermen saw that the youth was strong and could roll the ball well, he said, "You shall go with my sons tomorrow. You shall see greater sport than this." In the morning, when the Thundermen put on their great purple wings, the maiden brought forth another pair and fastened them upon the shoulders of the youth. Then they all flew away to the south. They carried bows and arrows of gold. Their wings were made a mighty roar and crashed as they flew. And the people on the earth said, "Listen how the thunder roars and crashes." Then they shot their golden arrows from their bows, and the earth people cried, "See how the lightning flashes across the sky." And some of the earth people ran and hid, for they were afraid. But the old man of the Thunderworld said to his sons, "Shoot your arrows only at the great birds of the south, which is our enemy. Destroy not the people of the earth, and fly not too low. Touch not the trees, for they are our friends." So they flew about for a time, taking care where they sent their arrows, and when they had grown tired of their sport, they flew back to their home in the clouds and took off their great purple wings. For many moons the youth enjoyed the company of the Thunder Maiden and took part in the sports of her brother. But at last there took possession of him a great longing to visit again his brothers and sisters of the earth. He longed to chase the deer in the forest, to follow his chief into battle, to smell the fire of his lodge. He told his longings to the old man of the Thunderworld, and the old man said he should have his way. So for the last time the Thunder Maiden fastened the purple wings to his shoulders, handed him the golden arrows, and bade him goodbye. Then away he flew with the Thundermen. Closer and closer to the earth they went, and the people covered their ears to keep out the crash and roar of the thunder, and they covered their eyes to keep out the sight of the dazzling, flashing lightning. "Oh, what a storm!" cried the earth people, as they looked towards a hill outside their village, where the noise seemed most deafening, and the glare seemed almost blinding. And there, on the hill, the Thundermen left their brother. Then, with many a rumble and flash, they flew away back to their home in the clouds. When the people looked again, the storm had lifted, and a warrior was descending from the hill to the village. They recognized him as the youth who had been lost for many, many moons, and they sat together around the fire of the lodge. The youth told them the tale that I have told you, of the Thunder People who dwell in the purple clouds. My darlings, I'm going to finish up today with a story from the Shoshone, who lived and live in my particular area. This is the story of the hummingbird. "See," said the grandfather as he sat in the opening of his teepee, "see the little firebird, how swiftly it darts. Now it drinks honey from flowers. How fast its wings move." A little Indian boy stood quietly at his grandfather's side. "I see the fire on its throat," he said softly. And then, as the bird darted away, he begged, "Tell me the story of the little firebird, grandfather. I like that story." Then the grandfather told this tale, which his grandfather had told him. Long ago, the Indian people lived in a country where it was cold, and the snow fell for many, many days. The falling snow covered the tracks of the forest children, so the hunters could find little meat. Many times the Indian children cried to the Great Spirit for warmth and for better hunting. Far to the west of the village there was a high mountain, and often the people watched the red sun as he sank from sight beyond the mountain, and all the sky was filled with brightness. One night a little child went running about the teepees calling, "Come, come, see the sun, see the sun!" The people looked towards the west. All the sky was bright, and they said, "The sun is touching the mountain top." But the brightness did not fade away as they watched. Instead, while darkness fell about the village, the red fire burned brighter and brighter at the top of the mountain. The people cried, "The sun is resting. He does not move. He does not sink behind the mountains." Then they were frightened, for they knew not what to think. All night they watched, and still the bright light shone above the mountain top. It flashed and threw fiery darts far into the heavens. And the people said, "The sun is angry. Perhaps he will destroy the earth's children." Then their wonder grew as far away in the east a light began to glow. It grew brighter and brighter, and then the sun arose on the eastern horizon. The people knew that the light upon the mountain was not the light of the sun. "There is fire in the mountain," they cried, "and fire is warm. It is beckoning to us with its hands. Let's move nearer to the fire mountain. It will not be so cold there." So the people of the village marched towards the mountain. The bright light had gone, but a cloud of smoke hung above it. For several days they journeyed and at last reached the foot of the mountain, and there they camped. Then 2 of their bravest warriors climbed up the mountain until they came to the very top. And there they looked down into a grand opening, shaped like a mammoth bowl, and it was full of fire. Then they hastened down and told the people. The people rejoiced and said, "The fire in the mountain will keep us warm. It will be good to live here." And then they made a new village at the foot of the mountain. For many moons the people dwelt there, hunting, fishing, making their beads and moccasins. Then one day a strange noise was heard. It was as though the mountain coughed. A great hoarse, rumbling cough like that of some giant. The people stood and listened. There was another sound like the first, but heavier, more convulsive. Then a great flash of fire shot up from the mountain top and fell again, and then another, and each time the fire leapt higher. "Let us run," cried the people. "Let us run." Even as they spoke, there was a great burst of fire and smoke, and huge stones were thrown high up into the air, and a stream came pouring down the side of the mountain, a stream that looked like liquid fire. Then the people ran. Indeed, there was no time to save anything but their own lives. Many streams followed the first one, coming like fiery serpents down the mountainside, and above was heavy smoke clouds shot with bursting rocks. Far away the Indian people ran crying, "The fire spirit is angry. What have we done that he should destroy our homes?" At last they stopped and turned to look back at the fire mountain. The flames were gone. Only a cloud of smoke hung about, but the fiery streams had burned all that was their way, and the rocks and ashes had buried what the fire stream had not destroyed. Then the people prayed to the Great Spirit, and as the Great Spirit looked down upon the mountains and saw what destruction had been wrought, he said, "Your flame shall be put out, your fire shall be quenched." And even as the Great Spirit spoke, the fires grew ashen in color, and the flames trembled and shrank away. But in the center of the great bowl of the mountain, where the fire had been, one little flame hung quivering. The Great Spirit saw it and said, "Little flame, you alone shall stay, but I will give to you a new form. You shall have wings and live among the earth's people, and drink the honey of its flowers. Little flame, you shall carry the color of the fire upon your throat. You shall be known as the hummingbird, and every child will love you." So quoth this raven. You all know my love for folklore and myth. If you enjoy these, let me know and I will do more. If you have a nation or people or area to request for mythological stories and spooky creatures, let me know down in the comments. I'm always open to suggestions. And have an absolutely beautiful day, my darlings. My darlings, it means so much to me that you come and listen to my little stories. I so appreciate it, but if you did like it, please feel free to hit the like button and subscribe so you can come back and hear more. My dearest thanks to my supporters, past and present. It means so much to me. Have a lovely day, my darlings.